Mason Zero ASMR here. My name is Mason, and today I have the next part of my cube video. If you missed the showcase of the white cards, go ahead and check out that video. It's my previous video before this one, and before that I had a video sorting the cards by color. So today, continuing in WooBurg order, we're going with blue. So I'm just going to get right into it, and as last time, we're going to start with the rares. So, our first card is Hypnotic Siren. It's 1/1 for 1. So the first card is Hypnotic Siren. It's a 1/1 for 1, but it's also an enchantment creature, and you can bestow it for 7, and you get to take control of a creature, and it gets +1/+1 in flying. So enchantments are a thing, and controlling creatures is always fun. Artifacts is also a thing, so we have Chief Engineer, so 1/3 for 2, which is fine, but artifact spells you cast have Convoke, so you can tap a creature to pay for 1 mana of that, so it allows you to play some sweet artifacts. Dungeon Geists is a classic card. It's a 3/3 flyer for 4. It's a spirit, so it goes into the spirit tribal, and its control. When it enters the battlefield, you tap a creature an opponent controls. It stays tapped for as long as you control Dungeon Geists. Phyrexian Ingester is a 7 mana 3/3 with Imprint. When it enters the battlefield, you exile a non-token creature, and Phyrexian Ingester gets +X/+Y, where that is the exiled creature's power and toughness. So that's pretty cool. You can take your opponent's bomb, exile it, and make it part of your own creature. So, pretty sweet bomb for 7 mana. Surikar's Spellblade is a 2/1 for 3. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you put a charge counter on it, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may draw X cards, where X is the number of charge counters. So, blue card draw attached to a creature. Pretty sweet. Thopter Spy Network goes into the Artifacts deck again. It's from Magic Origins, and it's an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control an artifact, you put a 1/1 Thopter into play, and when one or more artifact creatures you control deal damage to a player, you draw a card. So it really helps out the Artifacts deck. Our last rare is Academy Elite. It's 4 mana for a 0/0. Enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of instants or sorceries in all graveyards. You can pay 3 and remove a counter to draw a card and discard a card. So some nice filtering and could potentially be huge. Now the rest of our cards. Anticipate is some deck filtering. It's always nice. Secrets of the Dead. Whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, draw a card. Makes flashback more interesting. There's a lot of flashback cards. Dread Waters is for the mill deck. Target player puts X cards from their library into their graveyard, or X is the number of lands you control, so later in the game the better. Memory's Journey is 2 for an instant. Target player shuffles up to 3 cards from their library or graveyard into their library. Flashback for a green. So potential green-blue deck. Augur of Bolas lets you hunt for instants and sorceries. It's also 1/3 for 2, which is fine. Silent Departure. Return target creature to its owner's hand for 1, so when unsummon, you can flash it back for 5. It's a lot, but you might need it. It's relevant in the late game. Repeal returns a creature with mana, permanent with mana cost X to its owner's hand, and you can replace it. That's some nice control. Chill of Foreboding is part of the mill deck. Each player puts the top 5 cards of their library into their graveyard with flashback. Thassa's Devour is an enchantment creature, and it helps with the mill deck as Constellation. Target player mills 2. Wing Splicer is for the artifact deck. It's a 4 mana 1/1, but you get a 3/3 golem token, and golems have flying. There's a few golem creatures throughout the cube, so you could potentially build around it. This is a counterspell, counter creature spell, and then you get a 1/1 spirit token with flying. Nice for the spirits deck, or for just control. We have Blue's Vessel. It's a part of the mill deck. Target player puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard, and you draw a card. Scab Goliath is one of the blue top-end cards, 6/9 for 6. You have to exile 2 creatures from your graveyard, and it has trample. So, super relevant, good blue card for the late game. Nibbles of Dusk is one of my favorite cards, commons I guess, from Shadows. It's a 3-mana 2/1 with flying and prowess, and it's a spirit. So, I love it. I think it will do great in the spells deck, like blue-red spells deck for sure. Dream Twist is in the mill deck again, 1 mana to put 3 cards into someone's library, and has flashback for 2, which is super cheap. Jesse and Thief is fun. It's a 1/3 for 3 with prowess. When it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Warden of Evocile is nice for the flying deck. It's a 2/2 with flying for 3, which is nice already. Plus, it has the ability to make all your flyers cost less to cast, which is awesome. Quiet Speculation. Search target player's library for up to 3 cards of flashback and put them into that player's graveyard. That player shuffles his or her library. So either if you're playing flashback, you can get the cards into your graveyard if you need them, or if your opponent's playing it, you can get rid of one of the uses of flashback, or if you have a card to clear their graveyard after that. Sweet. Another flashback, 1 mana, and the flashback is 1 white. Return target creature you own to your hand. Just some protection that you can reuse. What would the cube be? What would the cube be without Treasure Cruise? 8 mana with Delve, draw 3 cards. I wish that card was not banned. Sage's Road Denizen is a 3 mana 2/3 creature. Goes into the mill deck. Whenever another blue creature enters the battlefield under your control, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library in their graveyard. I don't have any crazy mill cards you can see, but it's prevalent enough that you'll be able to build around the strategy. Like with this card. 2 mana 0/3 creature. Each opponent puts the top 3 cards of their library in their graveyard when it enters. Then if you have Delirium, if each opponent's upkeep, they also do that. Favorable Winds. Creatures you control flying get +1/+1. Works nicely with Levitation. Creatures you control flying. So a couple nice blue enchantments that work together well. Jace's Erasure. Whenever you draw a card, target player mills themselves 1. Mnemonic Wall is a 0/4 defender. It lets you get an instant sorcery back to your hand. Whirler Rogue is a 2/2 for 4 that also gives you 2 Thopters. And then you can tap 2 artifacts, and target creature becomes unblockable this turn. So, super value card. Embodiment of Spring is a 0/3 for 1. They can be sacked to find a basic land, put on the battlefield tapped. So, nice blocker on the first turns against fast decks, and then helps you ramp. Comparative Analysis is a 4 mana, draw 2 cards, but if you have Surge, if you play another spell this turn, you can pay 3 for it. So some incentive to play lots of spells in the blue-red spells deck. Whiplash Trap costs 5, but if 2 or more creatures enter the battlefield under your opponent's control this turn, you can pay 1 blue. Instead, return 2 creatures to their owner's hands. To return 2 for 1 mana is crazy. This trap would be good. It's very situational, but when it works, it's pretty sweet. And it is. Shriekghast works in Spirits and Mill. It's a 2 mana 1/1 flyer. When it deals combat damage, that player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. Stern Mentor. It has Soul Bond. And as long as it's bonded with something, each of those creatures has tap. Target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. So more mill. Since all the mill cards aren't great on their own, try to put a good chunk in. Dissipate is a 3 mana counterspell, but the spell gets exiled instead. Figured this was strictly better than some of the other 3 mana counterspells, especially just straight up cancel. So I like having that in the cube. Aspirate Aeronaut is a 1/2 for 4 with flying, and you get a Thopter. Merfolk Spy is a 1 mana 1/1 with Island Walk. When it deals combat damage to a player, that player reveals a card at random from his or her hand. So it's a low drop that gives you some information. Mind Scour Dragon is a 6 mana 4/4 flying dragon. Deals combat damage, that player puts top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. More mill and a high-end blue card. Fascination, X and 2 blue. You get to choose for each player to draw X cards, or each player to put the top X cards of their library into their graveyard. So either draw or mill. Quiet Contemplation is a 3 mana enchantment. When you cast a non-creature spell, you can pay 1 to tap a creature an opponent controls. It doesn't untap during the next untap step. Mind Sculpt, 2 mana sorcery. Target opponent puts the top 7 cards of their library into their graveyard. Premium mill card there, especially when you're working with 40 card decks. Rakshasa's Disdain is a 3 mana counterspell. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 1 for each card in your graveyard. In the spells deck, this is just a 3 mana counterspell without a color restriction of double blue that a lot of them have. Aetherize, 4 mana instant to return all attacking creatures to their owner's hands. Helps with tempo and whatnot. Tome Scour, target player puts the top 5 cards of their library into their graveyard. Triton Tactics has a lot of text on it, and it's our last card. Up to 2 target creatures each get +3 until end of turn. Untap those creatures. At this turn's next end of combat, tap each creature that was blocked by one of those creatures this turn, and it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So a nice control card for 1 mana. It works nicely as a defensive move. So guys, that is blue. I hope that you enjoyed these cards. I think blue is strong. It's got lots of cheap stuff and a few expensive things that are quite the bomb. Lots of mill, lots of draw, lots of typically blue shenanigans. Tell me what you think and what you think of blue and white so far now that you've seen both. Next colors will be coming the next several days, so stay posted, and I will see you guys in the next video for the